What do you picture when you feel lonely? An empty room in your childhood home? The last subway train at night? A quiet, deserted street at dawn? Or an endless desert where, no matter how far you walk, you never meet anyone? Loneliness is something everyone experiences. But what we don't often think about is that, in a way, each of us is alone all the time. No one else, not even the people closest to you, like a parent, a sibling, or your best friend, can fully understand you. And no one can really see what your loneliness looks like. But that doesn't mean you're alone. Journal with Witch is an original manga by Tomoko Yamashita, later adapted into an anime by Studio Shuka. And it explores that kind of loneliness. When the protagonist Asa is 15, her parents die in a car accident, leaving her completely alone. Her aunt Makio has always struggled with everyday life and social norms. She skipped school, clashed with her mother, and resented her perfect sister. As an adult, she cut ties with her family and became a writer, choosing a life of solitude. At her sister's funeral, Makio feels sorry for Asa. She can't bring herself to leave the girl to relatives who don't really care about her. So she does something that, for her, feels almost heroic. She breaks her solitude and becomes Asa's guardian. But can they actually live together? Makio is strong-willed and set in her ways, finally living the life she chose. Asa, on the other hand, has lost everything at a time when nothing in life is clear yet. Will they be able to understand each other, accept each other, and, in a way, share their loneliness? The loneliness of the two protagonists is directly tied to loss. Journal with Witch handles grief with a lot of care and restraint. In the early chapters, Asa doesn't cry at all. She hasn't fully processed what happened yet. Instead, she seems to drift through life, almost as if she's watching it from the outside. She falls asleep in the middle of the day, slips into memories and daydreams. This is reflected in the non-linear storytelling, where lines and images flow from one scene into another, like everything is part of the same, long dream. She talks about her mother in the present tense, automatically walks back to her old home after school, and tries to hide what happened from her classmates. But little by little, that numbness starts to fade. Asa thinks about her parents more often, and with that comes a growing sense of loneliness, feeling of being abandoned and lost. She starts to feel different from everyone else, like there's no one left who loves her. And eventually, it sinks in. She'll never see her parents again, and she'll never truly get to know what kind of people they were.
みんなは持ってるのに、私だけ持ってないとかおかしくない？ずるい、ムカつく、ずるい、ムカつく、ずるい。全部お母さんのせいじゃん。全部お母さんが勝手に死んだからじゃん。
But along with the pain comes a rethinking of the past. As Asa looks back on her relationship with her parents, she realizes that her mother imposed her own views on almost everything from what Asa should eat to which school club she should join. Partly because Asa was still a child, and partly because her mother was the kind of person who was always certain she was right. Even now that her mother is gone, that influence lingers. Asa is afraid to join the music club at school, afraid to make her own choices about the future. She doesn't even understand how someone could keep a diary hidden from adults. With the pain comes another realization. Asa had been living in a golden cage, and at one point, she even writes in her diary that death doesn't absolve people of their faults.
なんかわけわかんなくなっちゃって。ごめんなさい。
Makio goes through her own set of contradictions. At first, she insists she isn't upset about her sister's death. She says she hated her. But when Makio arrives at her sister's home and starts sorting through her things, she can't help but feel that she's lost something. She looks at a calendar filled with plans for the next week, things that will never be done. At the plants, no one will water anymore. at the dirty t-shirts that were never washed, and she's struck by how terrifying it is to simply disappear like that, all at once.
Sayonara. Sayonara. Sayonara.
The more she talks to Asa, the harder it becomes to hold on to that hatred. Through Asa, she starts to learn about her sister's life, her struggles, her habits, and the way she saw the world. All of this, on one hand, brings that sense of loss to the surface. But on the other, it helps Makio let go of old resentment and pain. After all, there's little point in being angry at someone who can no longer answer you. In Journal with Witch, loss brings the two closer, but it's not a simple tragedy. It's a complex maze of conflicting emotions. What is usually said against loss? Love. Characters find friends, new relationships, a chosen family, and slowly begin to let go of what they've lost. But in Journal with Witch, love, just like loss, isn't portrayed as something simple. Alongside warmth, care, and a sense of rescue from loneliness, it also brings pressure, awkwardness, guilt, and pain. This idea is explored especially well in the beautifully crafted 6th episode, Overlap. Asa's school friend Emily comes over to visit, but at first, she only finds Makio at home. Out of curiosity, Emily asks why Makio doesn't have a husband. After all, her own parents constantly pressure her to get married. In her usual way, Makio replies that relationships are a personal choice. There's no right or wrong answer. But then, unexpectedly, she recalls her ex, Kasamachi. We get a brief flashback showing just how painfully their relationship came to an end. Then Makio goes back to her room and, caught in a wave of nostalgia, texts Kasamachi, inviting him out for a drink. But she's interrupted by a call from a supervisor. This is where the episode starts getting a bit clever with its storytelling. We only hear the very end of the conversation between Makio and the supervisor, and for some reason they're talking about other countries. It makes you wonder, is Makio planning to leave? The episode plants that question and lets it hang. As Makio hangs up, she accidentally sends the message to Kasamachi. Right after that, she steps out of her room and, without any real context, hands Emily one of her films, saying, "Maybe this can be your refuge." What exactly she means and why she says it remains unclear. Then we get a gentle scene of Makio meeting Kasamachi, and Makio catches herself feeling drawn to him again. We see another brief flashback, how they first met and how things fell apart. Kasamachi was deeply in love with her, but raised by a strict father, he constantly expected Makio to do things properly, clean up after herself, show up on time, not disappear into work, cook, keep routines. For Makio, who struggles with all of that, it became exhausting. In the end, she had to choose between love and her own sense of freedom. So now she tries to suppress those feelings. After all, she was the one who rejected him. She's the one who broke his heart. But it's already too late. Their conversation drifts into what kind of men Makio is attracted to, and out of jealousy, Kasamachi brings up that same supervisor. At that moment, we return, almost like a tape rewinding, to the phone call from earlier in the episode, finally hearing the part we missed. It turns out the supervisor has actually read Makio's book, even though he never cared about fiction before, and doesn't really understand why people read it at all. Makio explains to him that fictional stories can become a kind of refuge, a way to escape loneliness, a way to feel like you've stepped into another country. And that's the moment everything clicks. That earlier line about another country suddenly resolves two threads at once. On one hand, there's relief. Makio isn't planning to leave after all. On the other, it reframes the scene with Emily. We realize that what Makio said about a refuge wasn't random. It was a direct continuation of that conversation. The supervisor is the one who, in a way, nudged her to reach out and help the girl, in her own subtle way. She gives her a film that depicts a relationship between girls, which helps Emily make sense of herself and her feelings. But that's not all. Makio's meeting with Kasamachi comes to an end. They go for a walk, and it becomes clear that he still has feelings for her too, but he's holding back, not wanting to hurt her again. we start to understand just how complicated and how meaningful their relationship is for both of them. And in the end, we get a clear answer to those seemingly casual questions Emily asked back in the kitchen. In that way, the memories, fragmented lines, silences, and overlapping scenes in episode 6 come together into a carefully constructed puzzle. We see how love and the pressure Emily feels from her parents makes her question herself and feel like something is wrong with her. We see how, in Makio and Kasamachi's case, deep love ultimately led to the end of their relationship. And we're given hints about how Kasamachi himself was shaped by a strict father who expected him to be a real man. This idea carries through the rest of the series, Journal with which leads to a somewhat unexpected conclusion. Love isn't a universal answer. It doesn't always save you from loneliness. In one of the final scenes in the manga, Makio talks to her best friend, someone she's known since school. They reflect on the fact that even their friendship is the result of years of effort, something they've actively worked to maintain. It's not just love or care, it's a choice, and it takes work. And while that has its own value, it also comes with a cost. In interviews, Tomoko Amasita has said she's always been drawn to stories about imperfect, somewhat irresponsible adults, uncles and aunts who don't hover over children, but instead give them a kind of freedom they've never had before. She often emphasizes that she values adults who treat children as individuals, who allow them to be independent, and dislikes those who talk down to kids or treat them condescendingly. That perspective clearly comes through in Journal with Which. Makio and Asa's relationship starts with a strikingly honest line. Makio tells her outright, "I don't know if I'll be able to love you." And throughout the story, we see that she doesn't treat Asa like a daughter, but more like an equal, someone with her own agency. She respects her boundaries, doesn't pressure her, doesn't scold her for skipping school or making typical teenage mistakes. Instead, she gives Asa choices. From whether to accept Makio's help at all, to something as simple as what they'll have for lunch. But that goes both ways. In return, Makio expects the same respect. Asa shouldn't push her, shouldn't cross her boundaries, and shouldn't disrupt the space they share. Their relationship is built not on love, but on mutual respect. And Journal with Which suggests that, when it comes to raising someone, respect and the ability to explain your point of view matter more than unconditional love. There isn't a single scene where Makio yells at Asa, not because Asa doesn't make mistakes, she definitely does, but because Makio recognizes her right to feel whatever she feels and to make those mistakes. No one has the right to impose their worldview on someone else. No one has the right to judge a person for who they are, and no one has the right to condemn someone for the choices they make.
あなたの
気持ちは
あなたの感情はあなただけのもので
私だけのもので
誰にも責める権利はない。
誰にも
But just like with loss and with love, this kind of freedom comes with both a value and a cost. On one hand, it gives Asa the space to do what she wants. Write music, read her mother's diary, invite friends over. On the other, it forces her to constantly ask herself who she is and what she actually wants. Before, her mother made those decisions for her. Now, all that responsibility falls on Asa. And we see how heavy that realization is for a teenager. She struggles with loneliness, with losing her sense of self, with shame and anxiety. Freedom is frightening. When Kasamachi loses his job at the bank, and with it the conventional path he'd been following under his parents' expectations, he falls into depression. When Asa's mother couldn't get married and ended up different from her peers, she tried desperately to hide it. Once you realize that your life depends entirely on your own choices, that your future is shaped by you alone, the weight of that responsibility can be overwhelming. It takes real courage to step off the well-worn path of expectations and choose your own, uncertain one. Only after years of trial and error does Asa begin to grow up, gradually developing the same inner resilience Makio has. And Makio in turn learns from Asa, learns how to build relationships and how to give up a part of her freedom in order to share her life with someone else. We all fall in love and get hurt. We long for freedom and fear the responsibility that comes with it. We go through loss and don't always realize it right away. We're all afraid of loneliness and we try to run from it. None of us can control someone else's feelings, and none of us can ever fully understand another person. It's a lonely journey, full of contradictions, like wandering through an endless desert. But Journal with Witch suggests that it is possible to share that journey with someone. It just takes work. It takes respecting other people's boundaries and feelings even when you don't fully understand them. It takes finding a fragile balance between love and freedom. No one will ever truly know what your loneliness looks like. But that doesn't mean you have to be alone. In the end, as Makio herself puts it, books, films, anime, manga, they can all help us along the way. And maybe Journal with Witch can become that kind of refuge for you. Something you return to when you feel truly alone. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video and let me know in the comments what film or anime has helped you on your own lonely journey. And feel free to check out our Patreon, where I share a lot of extra content. Link in the description.